Hello, I'm Malcolm Cox, and this is your Tuesday teaching tip. These are tips for preparing a Bible lesson. Some of them come from books, some from recommendations from friends of mine, and others are my own experimentation. They're not the way, they're a way. Find the tips that work for you, but I'd encourage you to try these at least and see if they are helpful. Today's episode is episode number 6, and it's called Get to the Gravy. What's that all about? Well, watch on and you will see. Right, let's get to the gravy. In our passage that we've been working on for a while, we have an amazing amount of material. Jesus is with the crowd. The teacher of the law comes and says, I will follow you. Jesus talks about having no place to lay his head. Another disciple comes and asks to first bury his father. Jesus says, follow me, and let the dead bury their own dead. Gets into the boat, they follow him. The storm comes up, Jesus is asleep. They wake him up. He rebukes them, why are you so afraid? And then rebukes the wind and the waves. And the men are amazed and ask this key question, what kind of man is this? Even the winds and the waves obey him. So what's going on here? Well, what I want to talk about this week is the fact that there's so much in this passage, it could be rather tempting to try and teach too much. Perhaps this is one reason why some of our lessons are a little too long. It's also sometimes why our listeners find it hard to focus, or find it hard to know quite what the point is, or maybe find it confusing and even difficult to make a decision. What am I most supposed to do as a result of listening to this? I would suggest that rather too many of our sermons, and I include my own in this, try to cover too much material. Instead, we've got to get to the gravy. In other words, we've got to boil it down. Sometimes the gravy is too weak. There's too much liquid. And what do you do if you have gravy that's weak? You boil it, and you boil off the excess liquid until you get to the really tasty gravy. When you pour that over your food, oh my, how wonderful that meal is going to be. And I feel a little hungry even talking about it now. But we've got to get to the heart of the matter, and that's what I want to talk about in the rest of this episode today. Let's get to the gravy. How do we do that? Let me show you something. You might find this helpful. Printing out the lesson overview with 3 lines, the summary, a sentence, and the title. We'll get to these other 2 in a moment. First of all, the summary. What we want to do in here is to write down a summary of what this passage is about, the passage we're looking at, Matthew 8. And again, the summary will vary depending upon the audience and the kind of lesson you're preparing. But for example, it could be something like this. When following Jesus is our first priority, we discover his power. How do we know his power? We can't do that unless we follow. We discover his significance. We discover his identity. What kind of man is this, they say. What do? We see his power, as they do, calming the wind and the waves. We are amazed by him, at him. What else? Perhaps we are also seeing that if Jesus is Lord of creation, which he is, calming the wind and the waves, if Jesus is Lord of creation, therefore he should be, let's put should, I don't like the word should, but anyway, he should be Lord of us, of humankind, of men and women. This, I think, is some kind of summary. Now, we've got our summary. It then can be very helpful to put that into one sentence. One sentence, the whole point of the sermon. What might it be if it was one sentence? Here's my offering at this time. Something like this. Follow Jesus without holding back, without reservation. Let's try reservation for today. Without reservation. Follow Jesus without reservation, and you you will find out who he is. Or it could be you will be amazed at him, astonished by him, something like that. So you can come up with your own summary, you can come up with your own sentence. This is very important because it helps the sermon to have a core, a heart, a point. Then we go to our title. What might our title be? I've already thought of some points. If you've seen earlier episodes, I particularly like the ones. Point one would be for me, follow me into the boat, follow Jesus into the boat, and the second would be follow Jesus into the storm. He's calling us, follow me into the boat, follow me into the storm. I rather like that. So that's my take on this passage. It's about following and about the consequences. Sometimes getting into the boat, that decision, sometimes into the storm, not being terrified as we follow, and then we find out who he is. So what might a title be? It could be follow me and find me. Find out who I am. That's one possibility. Follow me and find me is one option. You may be able to think of others. The key thing I feel what you need to get across from this passage of the two men, that one says that he will follow, the other says he will follow after he's buried his father, and then the disciples follow Jesus into the boat, and then they find out who he is, or get a better idea, at least, of who he is by the way that he treats the wind and the waves. That the following is a big deal. Follow, follow, follow. And then discover who he is. Now, you may be able to word this better. You may find different ways of interpreting this, but the exercise is very helpful to boil it down so we get to the gravy. Write a summary of the passage, write the point that you're trying to get across in one sentence, and then look for your title. I believe if you do this, you will find your structure and your lesson subpoints very easily, and your audience will never be confused about what the point was of the passage and what you were trying to get across. I hope this is helpful. Well, there you have it. Your gravy is ready to be served. Come back next time for next week's Tuesday teaching tip, and we'll look at another aspect of Bible lesson preparation. Please send me your questions, your comments, and your own tips. I'd love to pass them on. Until the next time, I hope you have a tremendous Tuesday and a wonderful week. God bless.